And then they're also prepared negotiators. So salespeople need to start planning and preparing for negotiations.
Hello Sales Nation and welcome to the Salesman Podcast Live in partnership with HubSpot and recorded at the Leadership Summit in Chicago. On this episode we have Tony Perzow and we're diving into one of my favorite topics of all time because he is a negotiation expert and we're looking at negotiation but from the standpoint of inside sales, whether we lose anything negotiating over the phone, over email versus in person. You can find out more about Tony over at yousuckatnegotiating.com, which is an amazing domain. Kudos. I'm picking that one, Tony. I appreciate that, mate. We link to that, the show notes, everything else that we talk about in this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. And with all that said, let's jump into today's show. So, Tony, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm glad to have you on. As I was just, before we click record, this is one of my favorite topics. I love negotiation. I love the psychology of it all. And so I'm really excited to have you on and dive into this. And we're going to start with inside sales reps specifically.
Okay.
And I'm going to kind of like tee you up here, and there's plenty of angles we can go with this, but they're on the phone, they're not meeting people in person. When they're negotiating, are they at a disadvantage to a salesperson who perhaps is getting in front of the prospect that they're trying to do business with? Are they at a negotiation disadvantage just using the phone?
Well, there was actually a study done a number of years ago by a Kathleen Valley at Harvard University, and she had a bunch of people negotiate over through the telephone, a bunch of people negotiate face-to-face, and a bunch of people negotiate email. And what she found was that the email negotiations, 50% of the email negotiations resulted in deadlock, no resolution whatsoever, as opposed to 21% deadlock face-to-face. So email negotiation is a big no-no. It's not good for business. So yes, inside salespeople who are over the phone, who are negotiating over the phone or selling over the phone, have an advantage if they are actually using the phone. Salespeople, outside salespeople, are probably at an advantage if they are getting face-to-face. There was another study that was done also at Harvard where they found that when people ate with each other, so when they ate in a restaurant and they're trying to sell in a restaurant over food, they did 12% better. They were able to achieve 12% better margin. When people were in a conference room eating like a sandwich or having like a donut, they did 10% better as opposed to people who didn't eat. So breaking bread with the other party, eating with the other party.
Why is that? And I'll take a guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it perhaps, and I might be totally off, and you can tell me rightly or wrongly here, but I guess when you're eating, perhaps you're occupying a certain part of your brain that would kind of want to disagree or argue or debate. I don't know. Because that's perhaps a primal part of your brain that is being shut up because it's going on. I'm being fed. I'm filling that criteria. Clearly, that's just a total guess out of the blue. But why is
probably
that?
Yeah. I mean, anything that gets our own brain to shut up for a moment is a good thing, right? So maybe concentrating on the other party and chewing and tasting, stops your thinking from going to your own ego and I need to win this or what's my boss going to think. That could be a part of it. I think there's also something kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just breaking bread with someone, sharing a meal with someone. There's something ritualistic about that. I think it gets collaboration, kind of the juices going. It gets people maybe more invested in each other. It's almost a way of getting that desk out from in between you. It gets the competition out of the negotiation, makes it more collaborative. So food is very important. So I recommend if you can, try to bring something, try to bring some food, try to bring some donuts, a cup of coffee, enjoy that with the other party. It's not only good for your own sales, but it's also good for the relationship. So back to your original question about the advantage. The problem with this whole model is that most people are now spending a lot of their time negotiating through email, and that's the big problem. And I understand why they're doing that, because it's easy. and we're in a very like I want things done yesterday type of world. But the problem when you
is it lazy?
It might be a little lazy. It's also really high. It's also really easy to like hide behind the computer screen, right? Not putting yourself out there. I talk about why we suck at negotiating, and especially in this country, in the United States, we have a problem with negotiating. We're usually not the best negotiators. Well, A, we don't know how to do it. Most of us don't have any formal education in it. And secondly, we're very preoccupied with what people will think of us in this country and not stepping on people's toes and what people liking us. We take it very personally. If someone lowballs us, we say, how dare they lowball? You know, in other cultures and countries, people tend to see negotiation more as a game as opposed to something that's so personal. So, and it's also their practice. I say this, I lived in Cairo for a bit, and I remember my first night living in Cairo, I went out to do a little grocery shopping, and I went out to buy some beans and some rice and some potatoes, some produce, some fruit, and it took me 3 hours and 27 minutes to do grocery shopping because I had to negotiate over everything. Here, we have fixed pricing. You go to Albertsons, you go to a grocery store, you see a bag of almonds for $3.99. We never say, hey, today I'm going to offer Albertsons $1.27. Yep. So it's not something that's part of our culture. We even have
it's my experience in Thailand as well. Yeah. I got to the point where I was just happy. Everything was so cheap. I was happier to pay more and not barter, negotiate on it. Yeah. Because I felt uncomfortable doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a problem here. So that gets us emailing, and we think emailing is effective, but it's not. Especially for a salesperson, when you're supposed to, salespeople often have the trouble, this idea of selling before you negotiate. So I've taught a lot of procurement, a lot of buyers, and the first thing I'll teach buyers is make the negotiation transactional. Don't allow your salesperson to sell. Get them negotiating before they sell. That's part of every buyer's playbook. Get them negotiating before they have a chance to sell. Get them talking numbers. Salespeople oftentimes will go into negotiation and they don't even get a chance to start selling their solution. They start discounting right away, right? So the problem with email, it's hard to sell your value. It's hard to sell your solution. It's hard to sell before you negotiate on an email because email keeps things very transactional. It's at a buyer's advantage to get you going through email because they can keep it all about price.
How does this work? Because clearly the world of sales is changing.
Yes.
Clearly 5-10 years ago, salespeople had access to all the information and we were the gatekeepers and we would only tell you about the product specifics and that you needed to make a purchasing decision when we were ready to do it. Clearly all that's been taken away. It's now a buyer's market, commoditization of industries and all this good stuff as well. So when you say this, if a buyer wants to negotiate over email because they feel they've got the advantage, I guess we can look right now in 2017 and we can look kind of 2020 and onwards as well. Should we allow them to do that because we're here to serve the buyer, or and the buyer comes first and all these cliches, or should we be pushing them to be on the phone so that we have the competitive advantage?
Well, that's a good question. So
and forget that we're at a sales conference now. Just, if you're going back in between procurement and sales, and from my perspective, all this, the market is always right, and we've got to adapt to that. So should we be playing their game, or should we be a little bit selfish and get them on the phone so that we can sell value and all that good stuff as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, so the problem is, especially in this country, 2007, 2008, when the economy went south, I was in the corporate training world, and then I saw, sales didn't slow down for us corporate trainers because companies started investing money in their procurement divisions to cut costs. They wanted to teach. So buyers started getting trained how to competitively negotiate, and which competitively means kind of zero-sum game negotiating, right? Yeah. So I'm going to get a bigger piece of pie than you. So buyers, a lot of procurement divisions have playbooks, competitive negotiation playbooks that are tactic-ridden, and these tactics work like a charm on salespeople because salespeople are not being taught how to countermeasure these tactics. So yes, salespeople do need to get tougher. And when I say tougher, it doesn't mean combative, because salespeople can't be combative. You never want to be combative. But salespeople need to start learning how to play the game of negotiation. And back to your question, should salespeople start figuring out creative ways on how to get that face-to-face time, how to get them on the phone, how to avoid transactional negotiations? Absolutely. One little tip that I give, I call it a smile and dial. So if your buyer wants email, well, if you can, get them on the phone and then send them the email while you're on the phone and walk them through the email while you have them on the phone, right? So that could be an opportunity. What's also big now, and I do this in my own, because I'm a salesperson myself. I'm selling my services, and I was just, in my workshop, I was just speaking about Aristotle's 3 pillars of persuasion, right? So how to persuade somebody. And one of the so there's ethos, there's pathos, and there's logos, and pathos is one that we often forget. And pathos is how to create an emotional reaction in the other party. So whenever you see, I'm a big documentary watcher, so whenever you see it at the end of a documentary, it says join the movement. Yeah. I'm always the one joining the movement. I'm like the one who's going to be in like Croatia the next day joining the movement. So
your Twitter's full of just hashtag save the dolphins.
Exactly, yeah. So that documentary is creating pathos, which is creating an emotional reaction in me. So what I found is even one step further, salespeople can start using video, which is amazing. And this is what I do. It's like, okay, they don't want to pick up the phone. I understand. They don't want to meet me for a cup of coffee. They're too busy. Well, that's just the way of the world right now. So what's another option? They're Skyping, right? They're Skyping. But I think where the sales world is going to is video, making personalized videos for your buyers. So
is that the compromise perhaps between having an outside sales team and an inside sales team? Of you want that face-to-face, you want to know that you've got engagements and all the body language stuff and all that comes along with it, whether you're trained in it or you're just a real person and you understand that someone's not looking at the screen, so they're not paying attention to you. Is that the compromise between the two, perhaps? Because I know when I do these interviews from the Salesman Podcast studios, we do them over Skype. If I do it over audio, I even sometimes drift off as a kind of asking questions or making notes, where if it's on video, I'm really carefully studying the person, and as we're doing this face-to-face now, I'm going on your reactions and asking questions and limiting the length of the questions and all this good stuff on the back of your reactions. Yeah. So is that the real competitive advantage, even more so than just the phone?
I think so. I mean, I'm going to kind of take this back to this Aristotle's 3 pillars of persuasion. So, the old kind of sales tactics were, well, if you can't get your it's a lot easier for a buyer to say no to you if they have no idea who the hell you are or what you look like, right? Yep. So I would tell salespeople, put a picture of yourself in your email signature, so at least at least they have a face, they have a visual, right?
And why is that?
Because I think people, we're human beings, know, and as soon as that person on the other side of that email becomes real to us, and they're not just a bunch of words on a screen. Yep. Once that person becomes real and there's a face, and we start feeling some compassion, right? At least some of us do, right? But I think when you start looking at video as a means, now I'm even going away from negotiation here, but when we start looking at videos as a means to sell, we're now bringing in pathos, because you can create that emotional reaction, right? There's that I'm a person, and especially in that personalized video, if you can start using metaphors and relate it to the interest of the person you're speaking to. So, for example, let's say I did my research on you, and I figure and you're a big football fan, okay? So if I can start using metaphors that relate to football, then I'm creating a pathos. I'm creating an emotional reaction. So with video, you can create that pathos. You can of course create the ethos, which is credibility. I'm an expert. I'm likable, right? A big part of ethos is being a likable person. So if you're a likable person, you need to get in front of that person. You need to be able to talk to that person. And then the most important part is you can start showing logos, which is evidence, right? So saying to you, listen, my company was written about in the New York Times last week, is persuasive, but if I'm able to show you, and here's the article right here in front of you, yep, and we were written about, that's called logos, right? So Aristotle said the great speakers of his time, the reason why they were so persuasive was because they backed up everything they said with evidence and support. you can do that on video, right? You can be talking about your solution, and you can be bringing up statistics. You can be bringing up charts. You can be bringing up graphs. You can be bringing up pictures, and so.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
So that all makes total sense, and
Okay.
I don't think there's anyone listening that would disagree with that.
Okay.
Is this something, and it's going to sound like a silly question, but I think the answer is important. Is this something that we should be preparing for before a quote-unquote negotiation? As in, we're going to do these things, we're going to bring these things up, I'm going to have had them bought into me personally by sharing a personal anecdote or whatever it is. Is this a step-by-step process, or should we do what most salespeople do, is walk into a negotiation with a notepad and try and blag it all on the spot?
Yeah, but no. So preparation is key. So the most successful negotiators in the world they're creative negotiators, and that's a whole other kind of subject, being a creative negotiator. And then they're also prepared negotiators. So salespeople need to start planning and preparing for negotiations. I was a salesperson for a long time, and I could tell you that most of my planning for a negotiation was done on the car ride over to see the buyer, or on the plane ride. It was a 2-hour flight. I would maybe spend some time, or with breakfast with my sales manager at the hotel, we would come up with our strategy, right? Preparation is a lot more in depth than that. So,
and how important is that on the context and the scale of, if the procurement officer, to use that example, if they haven't done any preparation and you have, does that massively favor you in the negotiation?
Yeah. So there's in negotiation, there's power sources, right? So there's a list of maybe 10 different power sources, and I advise salespeople to, and it doesn't take very long, to go through every single one of those power sources and be able to kind of check off where they have leverage or where their buyer has leverage, okay? And this is the biggest obstacle to success for salespeople is themselves. Meaning, most salespeople think that they have less power than they actually do. Most salespeople think that buyers have the majority of the cards. And this is a big problem, because when salespeople are entering in negotiations thinking that they don't have any power, that leads to salespeople discounting, giving concessions, giving big concessions, and caving in. So
I've been there.
Yeah, and I've been there too. But if salespeople can start getting an idea of their power sources, and so I give all salespeople, it's a kind of like a power ledger that they go through, and they just give a check where their power sources are. And they'll soon start realizing.
What's a couple of examples of these? We don't need to run through them all, but just to give some context.
One might be who's more motivated. Okay, an example of that. I do some consulting as well, so I'll consult, like hourly consulting with a company. And there's one company I was working with, a tech company, who created this app for insurance companies. So when you have a car accident, all the pictures and getting the quote on how much it's going to cost is all done through this app, through you taking pictures. So it's a technology that this startup was trying to sell to a massive insurance company. And I was consulting with them. I was helping them through this negotiation. And they told me that in one of their meetings, the buyer said, listen, I'm retiring next year, and this is my swan song. I want to introduce this technology to my company because I want this to be my what I'm known for, that I'm the one who brought this technology to this insurance company. Yeah. So when somebody says something like that in a negotiation, they're giving away power. That buyer obviously never took a negotiation course, because he just said how much he became a champion right there. How much he wants that to be his swan song. So right there, motivation, you could check there for the salesperson. We've got that power source. Time, right? Who's under a deadline, right? So if you find out through your information gathering, through your asking of questions, that buyer is under some sort of tight deadline, and you know that deadline, then you definitely have the advantage there. Another power source might be who's the better negotiator. So maybe I'm doing a workshop. So I was invited by the MJ Biz conference. It's the largest cannabis conference in the world. So they invited me, the first time ever they're bringing in a negotiation speaker to help people learn how to negotiate in the marijuana business.
Yep.
And so I did my customization calls with them, and they said a lot of the buyers in this business are bud tenders, right? These are people who are like, who've probably never been in a negotiation. They're passionate about growing marijuana, and so these bud tenders are probably not the most sophisticated negotiator. So you might have the advantage of being a better negotiator. So that might be, your tick right there. So it's going through this list and finding out. The most important thing is finding out, oh my, I actually have a lot more power than I thought I had. And then you'll enter in that negotiation more confident and less likely to discount right off the bat, more likely to dig your heels in a little bit more, and and more likely not to be pushed around by procurement tactics that are being used frivolously and being used on like autopilot. They're just using these tactics because they work so well. So they're like, they don't even put much thought in it. They just know the right things to say, and salespeople fall for them. A quick example of that is one tactic. It's called the squeeze, and this is where a buyer makes you think that they're your best friend. So they'll say, "I love your product. I think you're fantastic. I'm crazy about everything you do." So they make you feel like, hey, you're king of the world. And for most salespeople, that's big, because most salespeople are generally very insecure about their pricing because they're told 1,000 times a day their pricing is too high, right? So a buyer is saying, they like me? Wow, that's amazing. And then they say this, but that price, right? You got to do something about that price. And 80% of salespeople, this is how they respond to that buyer's request. Well, where do you need me to be? Which is the worst thing you can say, but most salespeople will say, well, where do you need me to be? And just think of the message you send to that buyer when you say, where do you need me to be? You're sending a message that, hey, I can go lower. I was inflating my price to begin with. You lose a little respect and credibility there. Yeah. So buyers are using tactics like the squeeze on autopilot, and then salespeople come in and they get pushed around by these tactics, and they start getting into a price negotiation when they don't really have to. I'm really rambling on here.
No, you're not at all.
Okay.
I'm absorbing all this because I have faced that in the NHS in the UK. They have trained procurement professionals, and I would spend less time with them and more time with CFOs purely to get rid of all this bullshit. Yeah. It's almost 80s sales techniques that salespeople would use on them that they've gone, a lot of this works, we can use it the other way around. Yeah. So I would just, the best I could, skip those individuals if they were being all weird and manipulative, and go to the CFO, have the surgeon on board as a champion, and go that route around. There's one thing that I want to wrap up here, Tony, and that is, we've covered loads of practical steps here, which is amazing, which is the goal of every episode that we do. But how do you win a negotiation? What is the criteria for a salesperson to go, that was a job well done, I've won this?
Okay, well, so there's this idea of satisfaction, right? You want the other party to be satisfied. You don't want to have your buyer ever walking away feeling like they have buyer's remorse or that upset in some way, because in long-term relationships they're going to come back and they're going to try to get you back, right? So this idea of satisfaction. So let's say if I'm selling a used car, okay, I'm selling a car for $10,000, and in the back of my mind, I want to get rid of this thing for $6,000. I'd let it go for $6,000. Yeah. If you come in off the street and say, listen, Tony, I'll give you $9,500. Okay, you make me a great offer. I'm thinking, wow, what an amazing offer. If I say yes to you right away, well, you got yourself a deal. We shake hands. How might you walk away from that negotiation feeling?
I will tell you, and I'll use the context of the podcast.
Yeah.
I sell the podcast advertising space, the people that we work with, all the partners, and every single time I do it, and it's happened twice recently with, decent size 5-figure deals. And every single time it's been like, yep, there's kind of like, here's the proposal, here's the price. Yep.
Yeah.
And so I go, shit, should have been double.
That's exactly right. So you might, you might have buyer's remorse. You might be thinking, oh, I could have gone in there lower. But if I say no to you, no way at $9,500, and then call you up an hour later and said, you know what, I spoke to my wife about it, $9,500 is good. You'll be more satisfied, right? So there's there's satisfaction. Okay, so you want your buyer to be satisfied, but satisfaction is it's perception, right?
Yep.
Ideally, so in a perfect world, we want to have win-win. Okay, and win-win is called creative negotiating, and it's basically, most people look at negotiation as a zero-sum game, meaning they look at negotiation as like a big pie of pizza, and they're all fighting for how many slices they're going to get, right? So the idea, of win-win is, well, how can you and I go into a negotiation and just bake a bigger pizza, right? So I can get more slices of pie, you can get more slices of pie, and if you're Google and I'm a nobody, well, okay, if I'm only going to get one slice of pie, at least let it be the biggest damn slice of pie there is, right? So ideally, we want to find situations where we can grow the deal and make the deal bigger. If we can ever find a negotiation where it's all about price, but then all of a sudden, we're now including other things, and now we're talking about warehousing, and we're talking about white papers, and we're talking about testimonials, and we make this deal bigger. That is ideal. But the problem is, and I'm always looking for creative ways to negotiate, even with my own customers, but the problem is when you deal with these big companies, people don't have time to start dealing with these things.
Yep.
And there's such a hierarchy that getting things approved, this major bank who I'm negotiating with, I gave them a very creative option. They wanted a lower price, and I found some ways to bridge that gap using kind of creative negotiating skills. And they were very impressed. They're like, wow, we never even thought of doing it this way. And I was like, well, thank you very much. And then they tried to get it approved, and they wouldn't know how to write that into a contract.
Yeah.
So the deal never went through because they just didn't even know how to write creative things into a contract. So ideally, it's, we want to look for a win-win. If we can't get win-win, if I'm dealing with you as a buyer who's all about competitive, then we want to protect ourselves, and we want to we want to make sure that the other party's satisfied, and we want to negotiate competitively. So I don't know if that answers it. I don't know if I've answered myself, but there's a lot of different ways.
Do you know what you've done? And
what?
This is really important. I'm going to bring this up, and we'll wrap up with this, Tony.
Okay.
You have shared a whole ton of anecdotes of steps or process of practical elements of all this, but you've not said, here's the magic bullet, because there isn't one, right? It's different in every scenario, and you're dealing with a human who's just as complex and full of neurosis and all kinds of problems that you are as an individual yourself.
Yeah.
And I find as soon as I put it into a context like that, that you understand and you embrace the complexities, it allows you perhaps to leverage that into a more, it might seem more complex, but there's more value either side, and you're taking money off the table and making the pie bigger, as you described, rather than taking a bigger slice from it.
Yes, absolutely. So I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's about understanding the complexity and being able to step back and see that there's so many moving parts in a negotiation, and I think just having awareness of that and doing the best you can with awareness and mindfulness and not being lost in the weeds and not being unconscious about the process is a win right there, which will automatically result in less money on the table, or leaving less money on the table, better margins, better commissions for yourself, better operating profits for your company, and better relationships with your buyers.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I've got one final question.
Sure.
That I ask everyone that comes on the show.
Okay.
So I know your job title isn't salesperson, but you've done in the past. You're selling your services now, so you'll have an insight on this.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
It would be not to be. I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is not to be so scared, not to be so fear-driven. That
is that from I'm fearful of losing out, or I'm fearful of speaking to that individual? Where would that fear be manifested?
So it's fear of definitely losing out, fear of not being liked, right? Fear of kind of being myself with the buyer,
And how did you get through that one in particular? Because that is super a hot topic for me on the show to promote the fact that if we need to get people to know, like, and trust us before a negotiation, to build that leverage, to get them to buy in, to get them to be, less of a dick, for a better word, and try and manipulate us because there's some kind of connection there. How did you go and break past that kind of barrier?
Well, I think people want to like you, right? People want to like you. People want to be sold by you, and I think it took me actually learning how to speak. So when I started kind of speaking in front of large audiences of people, you need to be likable out there, or people are going to fall asleep very quickly. And I found, and I went through I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, when I first started speaking, I tried to be something that I'm not. I tried to be a speaker. I tried to be what a speaker should look like up there. There's a great comedic video on how to give a TED talk where it's like going through all the motions on stage, and then when I finally just started being myself and started explaining negotiation through my own life and how I see it, and I didn't care about being everything for everybody. And this is, and just understanding that this is my product. Negotiation is so I'm a speaker just who happens to speak about negotiation. And this is my product. And this is the vehicle in which I deliver this product. Is myself, my body, my voice. And you can take it or you can leave it. When I was able to kind of let go of needing to be what people expected me to be, I became a lot more persuasive up there. Yeah. And I became in demand as a speaker. So I guess as a salesperson, it would be, it's, there's a great Shakespearean quote, "To thine own self be true," and yeah, that's, figuring that out. So this might sound a little kind of metaphysical, but it would be like, there's this inner attunement before outer attainment. So, focus your energy on becoming the best person you could be, and focus your energy on becoming, good with yourself inside, and the outside will follow, right? The sales will follow, the relationships will follow. People will buy into you because you're buying into yourself, right? Simon Sinek says, people don't buy your how, they buy your why. People also don't buy your exterior, they buy your relationship with your own interior, right? They buy, people want to buy into people that they admire. So the first thing you need to do is admire yourself before someone else will admire you, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense.
Okay, good.
This idea of being congruent with who you really are,
yeah,
that shows high moral character. It shows that you're self-developed, that you've worked for that personal development, and that is an attractive trait in men, women, leaders. It's leadership. Maybe that's what it is.
Leadership.
People want to be led. They like to be led.
They do.
And so if you can position yourself in that congruently, then you're kind of 2 or 3 steps ahead in negotiation and sales and everything else. So with that, tell us a little bit where we can find your negotiation videos, how we get them, and then where we can find out more about yourself, Tony.
Sure. So my website is www.yousuckatnegotiating.com, and you can go to that website. I have my videos on my website. They're micro-learning videos, so they're like 1 to 2 minute videos. I got tons of them out there. And then I don't know if you were going to do this, but I'm at this conference today, so I'm giving away a video a day. So when you go to the office in the morning, there's going to be a 1 minute negotiation tip waiting for you in your inbox. And I've been doing this for a while, and the great thing I get from this is that people tell me that they'll listen to a tip one day, and all of a sudden, coincidentally, they'll be talking numbers that day, and they'll remember that tip, and that 1 minute tip was able to get them a better deal in that negotiation. So if you text the word negotiation to, what was the number I gave you? 444-999. If you text the word negotiation to 444-999, you'll get your first video today, and you'll get 30 videos every single day. Well, 1 video a day for 30 days every single morning.
Amazing stuff. Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump on that. Okay. I'll link to it in the show notes for this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. Matt, Tony, I want to thank you for your time. Great. I love this conversation, mate.
Yes, absolutely.
And thanks for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you.